Good Sunday morning, Iowa. It's Dr. Rick Godding. Thank you for choosing to spend some time with me here this morning. So I'm going to read something that I got in, I don't know if it was an email that came to me. Anyway, it's a website called Notes on Iowa. Notes on Iowa. So notesoniowa.com. And it came to me. And so my daughter is involved in the synchronized swimming team at Roosevelt High School in Des Moines. It's called the Sharks. And yesterday was January 18th, and I got this little thing in my email about the Roosevelt Sharks Club. That's very interesting. This is their 100th year of doing it. So, Iowa Time Machine. On January 18th, 1926, the Des Moines Roosevelt Sharks Swim Club first appeared in a Des Moines area newspaper. In an era where women's athletic opportunities would remain severely restricted, a group of young women at Roosevelt High School created their own space to compete, perform, and excel through the creation of synchronized swimming tradition that endures today. During the 1920s, high schools and colleges typically limited girls to just 6 sports: hiking, field hockey, swimming, basketball, tennis, and track. Even then, institutions often favored play days over competitive events, mixing teams from different schools to discourage rivalry and preserve feminine cooperation. It sounds funny even reading it, but anyway, this is, it's just, here's where we are 100 years later. Opening in 1923, Roosevelt High School was designed to serve the growing population on the west side of Des Moines, and the Gothic School was nicknamed the $1 Million School for its unprecedented construction costs. In 1926, a group of female students formed the first athletic club at their school that women could join, just months after 37 states began sponsoring high school varsity games and tournaments for women's basketball. And during the same year, the Amateur Athletic Union sanctioned its first women's basketball national tournament. The Sharks chose synchronized swimming. From its inception, the Sharks operated as a student-led organization where the young women choreographed their own routines, managed their own rehearsals, and organized their own annual pageants, and that is still how it is. A century after that first newspaper mention, the Roosevelt Sharks remain the oldest synchronized swimming club in the nation. The program continues to thrive at Roosevelt High School, maintaining its tradition of student leadership, where seniors cut music, design choreography, and train younger swimmers. And that is it. And it's it's coming up if you're in the Des Moines area. I don't think you can get a ticket, I'll tell you that. We'll get tickets because of family. We actually have some family coming in for Florida for the pageant. And my oldest daughter is what they call them ushers. And so that's interesting. You know, you hear usher and you think someone help guiding you to your seat. But the ushers for the Sharks pageant actually put on skits. So as the girls will go in the pool and they do multiple different acts. So they'll have like the shorter girls will do one, and then the taller girls will do one, and then the freshmen, sophomore, juniors, and seniors, and then I think there's one more of some sort of, or a few more of different kinds of mixes. So in between there, when they're resting or changing or that kind of stuff, the ushers will put on comedy skits. And so, so the whole family's involved this year. It's just kind of a cool little thing in Iowa. Like I said, it's the oldest synchronized swimming club in America, completely student run. They do the choreography, the stagecraft, the music selection, and all that. So pretty cool. And it's always good to reflect back on. Can you imagine? It's just different, and you can't get mad about the past because it was different. It was just different. We all evolved socially from small groups where brutality and force were kind of everything, right? And then, back in the early, sort of caveman days, right? So it is a good time to reinforce that as cold as it is and as it's been and as it will be again, as it is still winter in Iowa, listen, ice is very dangerous. I know I've said it a few times, but like I said, you got to be. Today, I'm recording, it's Monday, so I don't know what's going on by the time you're listening to this on Sunday, but these days where it's bright and beautiful and cold, just remember, you gotta be watching below. You gotta be watching where you walk, because at this temperature, you can have hidden ice anywhere. And so I thought, since I have talked about it multiple times, I think I'm going to go through sort of all of the common fractures that we see in the emergency room. And I'm going to talk about the fractures that essentially happen from slips and falls on the ice. And not just fractures, but a couple other injuries. And kind of tell you how we handle all those. Slipping on the ice can cause anybody of any age to have a fracture. However, most of the time, it'll be the elderly. if you are 20 and you're walking across the lawn and you fall down, you're not going to break your hip. If you're 80, pretty good chance you are going to break your hip. So there's a very big difference. Bone, as we age, you get what's called osteoporosis. So osteoporosis is different than osteoarthritis. Osteoporosis means that the bone, osteo, is getting more porous. So it starts to look more and more like a sponge, and there's less bone there. So it just becomes, the bone just essentially loses mass as you get older. So it just becomes more fragile or porous. And so osteoporosis is something that happens in aging. It happens worse in women after menopause. And that's why the younger women, and I'm talking, when I say younger, I mean, I guarantee you every woman listening to this is over 30. So that's just what I think. If you're under 30 and you're listening to this, that's awesome. I'm just going to guess most of the women listening to this program are over 30. If you're over 30, first of all, even when you're young, even if you're younger than 30, it's a good time to think about building up your bone, because there's a certain point in your life somewhere around 50 where it might even be a little earlier than that. I have to look, where you're just not going to build up significantly more bone. And so it's how much bone can you build up before you start to lose it, and then how much can you prevent it from going down, okay? So the number one most important thing is exercise. And the more you exercise, your bones get bigger as a result of exercise. They get stronger, and just like your muscles. So they work together. And, you don't have to, join CrossFit, but just getting some walking. And I talk about this all the time, how important it is to lift some weights, lift a little bit of weights with your arms. I know some of you might say, well, I've never lifted weights. Just get something small, get a pound or two, get the 3 pounds. Lifting weights will build up your muscles. It will strengthen your bones. It will strengthen your ligaments. And it will help your metabolism, because because muscle, as it builds up, it helps to metabolize carbohydrates. It helps with your insulin. It helps prevent diabetes. So people often neglect weightlifting as part of their exercise. If you're doing cardio, that's great. Add some weightlifting. So as you are aging, especially as a woman, you are at risk to lose bone. And it's pretty common, like all women will get osteoporotic, and most men will, oftentimes to a lesser degree, but still we see hip fractures in men as well. And again, the best thing you can do is you get your vitamin D. And if you live in Iowa, you should take a vitamin D supplement, because you are not getting the amount of vitamin D that you should, because the part of your body that's exposed to the sun, where we get most of our vitamin D from, is a tiny little fraction, and the time is a tiny little fraction. Like in the summer, you go outside, you got a short sleeve shirt on, that kind of stuff. The sun is very good for you. And in the winter, you're just not getting much. So you should be taking a vitamin D supplement. Now, that can be part of like a daily. Most of your daily vitamins, like your Centrum or the daily multivitamins, those will have vitamin D in them. And what I would say is, experiencing in my family right now some dementia. Not me, but my stepdad is having some issues with it. The one thing that they have shown, or one of the things that has shown over time to improve your likelihood of not being demented, is to take a daily multivitamin. And so the vitamin D will also help your bones. So take your daily multivitamin. It's not that hard to do. It's not that expensive. Now, you also need to eat well and have a good exercise program too. I know this whole keeping healthy stuff is for the birds, but you know what's really for the birds is not being healthy. And as I'm cruising along here in my career, and I will be full-time doing what I'm doing for another 6 years or so. 6 or 7, 6, 7, if you know what that means. After that, I'll go probably part-time, and I think I'm hoping to stay in Carroll all the way through, even when I go really, really full, part-time. But definitely another 6, 7 years full-time here in Carroll. But I am, it's that time where you start thinking about, okay, retirement. So everything I watch on retirement, if you go on YouTube, there's a whole section of retirement. And the one thing that every single sensible person that I've seen talks about. They talk about maintaining friendships and, maintaining family and what you do with your money and how much can you spend if you have this much, that kind of stuff. And they all say, if you don't have your health, none of that stuff matters. And so, it's a great time to take care of yourself. I've, always struggled with my weight. I've been back on the carnivore diet this year. I'm down now probably 7 or 8 pounds since January 1st, and I'm feeling just fantastic and just more and more energy. Again, carnivore is not for everybody. That's where I just pretty much eat meat and a little bit of cheese. But, you got to find something that works. If the Mediterranean diet works for you, everybody's metabolism is different. Everybody's body processes things differently. So find a healthy way of eating and get to it. And that will help your bones not get weak as well. A healthier diet. What's bad for bones is a lot of sodas, diet sodas, things like the same things that are bad for everything else are bad for your bones. And people don't think about the fact that your diet actually influences how your bones are, but it does. Now, obviously, you need to get enough calcium. You probably, again, if you get the multivitamin, you're going to get enough calcium. You probably don't need to supplement it. Eating a little cheese and some milk is probably plenty you need to do, or plenty to get even extra calcium. So, as you age, you got to be thinking about. Among the other things you have to think about is keeping your bones healthy. What we typically see in the emergency room is ankle fractures, wrist fractures, hip fractures, shoulder fractures, and shoulder dislocations. I'm looking at my clock here, and I've gone too far down the line to go over all of those. So I guess what I will do is just kind of finish out talking about the public safety aspect of it and the taking care of your bony health, and then maybe next week I'll go over those fractures and dislocations and how we address them all. But suffice it to say that if you slip on the ice, you can have a very life-altering fracture. I mean, a hip fracture is a life-altering fracture for most people. A shoulder fracture, not so much. As a matter of fact, some of the shoulder fractures, oftentimes, even if they look pretty bad, we can treat that non-operatively and the patient does fine. And then there's other shoulder fractures that you need to operate on, and there are different operations, and I will go over that. So the strategy is to be healthier and fitter. That's going to help you not fall, right? Now, ice is different. So I'm kind of blending things together. Ice, you just got to be careful of. It doesn't matter where you are in your life, and your age. You got to be careful with ice. But even when the spring comes and you're walking in the garden, if you are fitter and healthier and your muscles are stronger and your bones are stronger, you'll have less of a chance of falling to begin with and less of a chance of having a bad injury that's going to potentially be life-altering if you take care of those things. And because, I think a lot of people, and this is another issue that I see with retirees, is you see these retirees and what do they do? Well, they end up sitting and watching TV a lot. Some people, TV is not good for your brain. Go back to doing some reading, some thinking, get a hobby that keeps your brain sharp. But definitely, I just can't emphasize enough how important exercise is. And even if you've never exercised in your life, walk around the block, walk down to the mailbox, walk somewhere. And then do that every day for a week, and then the next week walk a little farther and pick up go to Walmart and get a couple of 1 and 3 and 5 pound weights. And if you've never lifted weights before, those will be enough to increase your muscle mass and make your ligaments and your bones stronger and reduce your chances of injury and help your body respond to injuries better. I understand that everybody knows in their, it's not news to anyone that you should eat right and that you should exercise. I mean, but if you just say, "Oh, you should eat right and exercise," that's just simplistic. Let me tell you what you should do. You should walk or ride a bike or swim, okay? And then you should lift some weights. And if you do those things consistently, you're going to be healthier. You don't have to run marathons. You don't have to, ride bike 100 miles. But if you're moving, you're going to be healthier. And with the diet, again, like I said, you take your multivitamin on the day-to-day, and that will get you pretty much that'll get you set up with all the things like vitamin D and calcium and potassium and magnesium and all these things that you don't really think about needing. And get rid of sodas, get rid of sugar, to make sugar an occasional treat instead of a daily, I like to eat Oreos when I do this on the daily. Don't do that. You're working against yourself. You're working against your own best interests, and so yeah. So that's basically what I really wanted to talk about the ice again, because as when it gets this cold, I worry about people just falling, and so again with the ice. It gets me to talking about falls, and falls makes me talk about injuries and bones and all that. So that's kind of all of it. But honestly, it's still early enough in the year, right? It's still only a couple, 3 weeks into the year. I mean, take this year and go do something big with it for your health. If anything, if this radio show does anything, if it can inspire a few people to get healthier, then it's well worth it, because I can talk about the robotic surgery that we're doing. I can talk about the new applications of technologies in the shoulder and all of this other stuff. But all of those things, again, without an underlying good health, they're not as useful. I mean, it's not as useful to have a good knee if you're not healthy enough to walk around. So yeah, so get healthy, eat better, take your multivitamin, and be real careful out there on the ice. And then next week I'll come back and I'll talk about the specifics of those injuries that you get when you fall, especially on the ice, but even generally on falling, and the wrist fractures, the shoulder fractures and dislocations, hip fractures, ankle fractures. Those are the big ones that we see. And talk about, just let you understand what happens when those happen, and just then you'll have a better idea of what you want to be avoiding. So I will be back next week, and you have a blessed week, Iowa.